Welcome. This is number 9. Well, number 9. And the Vicoding University training humans to train themselves. Vicoding University was inspired or initiated by Vicoding. Let me tell you what Vicoding is. I want to first talk a little bit about reading. Okay. Normally, when we read at about 250 words per minute. The process generally is we see a word, okay, then we have to figure out how to say that word. Or as we look at a code, now how do we say that code? We have to say that code to ourselves in our mind, and then after we say that in our mind, we have to figure out what we heard, and then we interpret it. That's how reading works. It's sort of like a 5-step process. And the reason is because the way language works is that language was first verbal. We're first trained up to 5 years old and can speak at 5 years old quite well verbally. We don't do any reading, and then at 5 then they start to try to teach us how to read. So the way they teach you how to read is they give you a code. Take that code, take that code and you change it into a verbal sound in your head, or out loud in that case. Then you listen to it, and then from listening to it, then you go, oh, now I know what it means. So that's sort of to me, a really roundabout thing. Why can't you just look at the code and understand what it means? Well, we can't, because that's not how we're trained. So we're trained to read in this very verbal sense. So when people talk about speed reading, they're really just talking about, I don't know, speaking faster. So a lot of times they say, well, we can double your reading speed, right? Okay. Well, that's sort of like going on YouTube and going and clicking the 2x button and listening to the YouTube at twice the speed, because you're still auditory, listening to what the person is saying when you read at twice the speed. So speed reading has really sort of been all confused with things like just reading faster to yourself. Okay. So I wanted to separate Vicoding as training yourself to look at the code and go directly to the meaning. So Vicoding, visual coding of the information and go directly to the meaning. So Vicoding. So Vicoding is what I first initially established, and the goal of it was to help people get trained to learn how to read written material or coded written material faster and understand it. And in that process of creating a training program for it, I realized that humans don't know how to train themselves. So I thought, how am I going to train them to learn how to Vicode if I don't teach them how to train themselves? So that's where Vicoding University came from. So Vicoding is simply looking at code and directly understanding it, so to speak. Understanding written material at the speed of thought. You look and you understand. Well, as you go through that training, or as I went through the training of developing the Vicoding things that you trained, you start understanding that our visual mind is sort of amazing. And if you look around the room right now, you see the whole room and all these inputs, and you can see couches, you can see chairs, you can see windows, you can see birds, trees, whatever you see in the room around you, you see it instantly. There's no question as to what you see. So why can't you look at visual material and get the same understanding? And the question is you can if you train yourself that way. Well, as you start to train yourself that way, you start to see that our minds start to see, let's say as a baby, you might see the ear of a dog, and then you see the nose of the dog, and then the eye of the dog, then the body of the dog. Then pretty soon you put it all together and you call it dog. Then you take a dog and you see it running, you say running dog. And then you see, and you start to combine it with the chasing a cat. Now you see a dog chasing a cat, and you start combining and combining and combining things, and you see it instantly. And you see it instantly because things repeat so often in nature. They repeat often enough that we can label them. And the labels can get bigger and bigger, so to speak, and we can understand them in an instant. So the idea that when we start training ourselves, we can start training little things that start to train faster and faster because we can put together bigger and bigger units. Earlier in this presentation, I talked about how the Chinese put together a 30-story building in a week. I mean, it was just, you sit there and watch it by the hour just going together, and it goes up floor by floor by floor by floor. It's just amazing. It's time-lapse photography, but in the week they have this 30-story building ready to be inhabited, and it's just amazing. But we as humans do the same thing. We start with simple little things, and visually you can look out, and you are basically putting together this huge visual contraption in front of you instantly. Okay, so as we start training ourselves to train ourselves to do more things, we can do the same thing. We can put together machinery on the fly to do things that just can amaze you. I mean, you train to do this, train to do that, and all of a sudden you put them together here, then you put them together in a different way here, and you can back and forth. So Vicoding training has just amazing possibilities, but you got to learn how to train yourself to do that. I mean, I never would have believed the Chinese could put together that kind of building in that little a time. But you watch the video and it's just amazing. But it's because they had these things put together in advance. They just brought them in, shipped them up, put them on. Brought them in, shipped them up, put them on. And we have the same capabilities in our mind to do that as well. So Vicoding University started out just as, how are we going to train humans to look at codes and put together bigger and bigger codes? I mean, you may not, I guess, let me put it together here this way. I told my wife, that when I was starting training a person out of Vicode, is that all people do is learn to look at the full page of words. She says, well, I can look at the full page of words right now. I said, I know, but you have to also learn how to put them together in a meaningful way. Now, your brain can do that, and it's amazing. You first put together a few little pieces, then a few more little pieces, then pretty soon you put together a chunk, and then you see that chunk here, 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 with little modifications, just like dogs have. Sometimes they're spotted, sometimes they have big ears, tall ears, short ears, tails, long tails, but it's still a dog, and you learn to see those minor differences, and you start to put together the dog chasing the cat, and you can see that all at an instant. So our minds are quite powerful if we learn how to train them to put things together. So remember, we talked about those tools of training that we can use. So Vicoding University simply says, what if we started, if Alan Carr can write a book and you can read that book in an hour, and it's taking you through visually and taking you guidedly through these situations where you now can see it happening. Remember, before you say, oh, I just can't see myself happening for me. Now all of a sudden you read the book and you go, oh, I can see 40 ways it can happen for me. And now you read 40 more or whatever, and you can start then saying, well, what about if I put it this way? And your mind starts to now even take it on further. I can put this one and this one, and now you can start seeing all sorts of things that you can start doing. Because we can use Vicoding as a guided tool, plus we can use Vicoding as a method of putting things together into bigger and bigger machines, and we can start with the tools in a human brain. You can start to see yourself being able to do amazing things. Okay, so that is Vicoding University, based on my initial attempts to train people to read directly or take the the written code and go directly to meaning and understand things. So I refer to that as Vicoding, not speed reading, because speed reading is so often interpreted as just verbalizing faster to yourself and sub-vocalizing and skipping words and all sorts of crazy things. No, Vicoding is what you simply look at the words and go straight to the meaning, and it's something your brain can do if it's trained to do. And then after that training, you can start to train yourself to put things together in bigger and bigger units. And then we can use that guided Vicoding, as Alan Carr did in his Easy Way to Stop Smoking, to do and to become a non-smoker, to become all sorts of different things. So Vicoding University, based on Vicoding. Anyway, I'll talk to you in a second here. Thank you so much. Bye.